Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Notes from Chicago. We are continuing with the tradition to release a mini episode. And really what we're doing with these mini episodes, we are highlighting past guests who have talked about all sorts of different things. And we want to highlight pieces of those conversations. And we want you to go back and look into the archive, look at those past episodes, learn a little bit about those folks, learn a little bit more about Chicago. So today we are highlighting guests and, portions of our conversations with them about what the city gave them, about, what drew them to Chicago and why they're here. I've talked a lot in the past, or some in the past, about all the places I've lived. And it's been a lot of places, really, really wonderful, huge, exciting cities with a lot going on. And and that I just always keep coming back to Chicago. But I haven't talked a lot about sort of my origin story in coming to Chicago, what brought me here and really what kept me here. So I came to Chicago all the time as a kid. I had relatives that lived in Michigan, and we would always stop on the way from Memphis, driving from Memphis all the way to Chicago, which is kind of a long drive, about 8.5 hour drive, depending on how fast you're going. And then we would always stop in Chicago, and we would always stop at Museum of Science and Industry, and we'd spend the night in Chicago, and then we make our way to this tiny little town in Michigan. So that's kind of my relationship with it as a child. As I got older, I have this core memory. I was in my 20s, but I came back to Memphis to visit over the holidays. I was maybe 23 years old, just a little babe. And my best friend and I, who was also home visiting, she and I drove up to Chicago for New Year's Eve. And we had friends up there, and we stayed with our friends. I mean, an amazing time, of course. And we're driving back again, that 8.5 hour drive from Chicago to Memphis. We turned to each other and just said, we're moving. I was living in LA at the time. She was in a grad school program in Michigan. We're like, we're moving. We're moving to Chicago. It's so fun. It's so electric. So incredible. And over the next, year and a half, we both moved to Chicago, and, we lived together, and we were roommates, and it was incredible. But I've been here for so long now, and had different forays into different cities, but kept coming back, that like when I think about what Chicago has given me personally, I think about so many things. I met my husband at Estelle's in Wicker Park at 3 a.m. before I even lived in Chicago. I was visiting from LA looking for an apartment. I had both of my children here at Prentice. I started bands here. I met so many friends here. I had so many amazing jobs here. I experienced so much here, music and food. And like now I have this podcast where I can explore all of that. And so when I think about what Chicago has given me, it is a million things, and it is one thing. And that one thing is really, my life. It has given like me this amazing landscape and playground to experience life. And it's great. So today we will hear from guests who are talking about some of that, maybe not as grandiosely as I just did, but they will talk about sort of different aspects of Chicago, what brought them to Chicago, and what the city has given them, both in terms of, potentially personally and professionally, but just also as like in terms of perspective. First up, we're highlighting Emma McKee. Emma is a cross-stitch artist, cross-stitch educator, perhaps better known as Stitch God. And she talked to us about what brought her to Chicago, and why she was living in Canada, and why she decided to move to Chicago. And it was a childhood memory. Let's listen to what she has to say.
It's very dramatic. I lived in Canada for about a decade. I was in school up there. I was working on getting a specialty visa to stay up there. I was working in a recording studio, and it all kind of went haywire. I got kicked out of the country. I had to move back to, yeah. The woman who was sponsoring my visa also had designs on my boyfriend at the time. And so she thought the best way to handle that would be to redact my supporting paperwork for my visa. So it got really like, isn't that crazy? I think they're still together. I don't know. She tried to Facebook friend me a couple years ago. I don't know. It was really traumatic, honestly. Like, I wanted to live in Canada for the rest of time. Like, I was quite happy there. But I remember Chicago from a visit my dad and I took on the Amtrak. We took an Amtrak from St. Louis. That was like our big thing. And we stayed we stayed downtown somewhere, and like little 10-year-old me saw the Viacom store downtown, and we went to Pizzeria Uno, and we went to the Shed Aquarium, and it just like really left such an impression on me. Chicago did. And so when I was in the process of like, oh, I have to leave Canada, LA in my head, big jump at that time. I was like 24. New York, it's too stressful for me. I certainly wasn't going to go live in Oklahoma with my family. And so I thought, gosh, I really love the Shed Aquarium. Oh my God. So I first picked up a needle when I moved to Chicago 13 years ago. I mean, I literally, like, one of the first pieces I ever made was for Chance the Rapper, and he wore it. Do you know what I mean? So like I made a present for my mom, a surprise present for my mom, because she was everyone in my family cross stitches. I didn't. I thought that it was like very strange, and I was just gonna leave them to it. And so for Christmas, I made my mom this cross stitch present, and it was a real shocker when I made it. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of like meeting the thing that you're supposed to do head on. It's very heady stuff. You know, I kind of was doing it and I was like, oh, this feels different than anything I've ever done before. Like, this feels right in my hands. And so I made that for my mom. And then, you know, like 3 things later, Chance was wearing my stuff on the cover of Billboard, you know? So there wasn't a whole lot of time between me actually learning the thing and then me being off to the races with it.
For the thing that you made. Next up, we'll hear from Johnny Jones. Johnny is a documentary filmmaker. He's the founder and CEO of The Lingo Chicago, and he is a North Lawndale native. Johnny was a great conversation. You know, he created this wonderful documentary series about North Lawndale, and being able to watch the first installment of that and also just hear his perspective about the community and talking to all those folks in the community about where Lawndale has been, where it is now, where it's going. It was so interesting and just a really great conversation.
I grew up in North Lawndale. I am originally from Rockwell Gardens, which was a housing project on the west side. I lived there until I was about 8 after my mom passed, and then my grandmother became my legal guardian. And I just remember growing up in Lawndale and just not having a lot of access to things.
One thing that Johnny talked about was really this experiment.
In my early 20s, I did this experiment where I moved to Lincoln Park for like 3 years because I just really wanted to know what it was like to walk out of the house and go to a coffee shop or go play pool or whatever, just to really have access, which I didn't have in North Lawndale. So a part of me just really wanted to see what that looked like and then really work towards trying to bring something back to my community. I love live music. I love leisure time, right? And it's like, but it's almost like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, it's almost like it isn't relevant in a community like North Lawndale. And then you wonder why people are partying in the streets or people are, you know, and it's just like, well, we don't have any place. So I really just want to create this very upscale sort of creative community-based place where people know that they can come and just enjoy a game of pool, enjoy some live music, and sip on some wine, and go home after that. So that's really what I want to create in my neighborhood.
And finally, we talked to Jahmal Cole, who is the founder of My Block, My Hood, My City. Jahmal, who, if you're listening to this and you're a person who lives in Chicago, I'm sure you know who he is and have heard about the work of his organization. In addition to that work, he is on this journey to spend a month living in all 77 neighborhoods in Chicago. One thing Jahmal talks about in our interview and in our episode with him was how he got his start in working with Chicago youth, and a rocky start, I would say, in his telling of that. And, kind of how it led to the formation of the great work that he does today with My Block, My Hood, My City.
I watched the movie Malcolm X so many times growing up. I thought Denzel Washington was Malcolm X, you know what I mean? And my mom, she was a Jehovah's Witness, so she had me going to church 4 times a week and knocking on doors on Saturdays. And so I was doing community organizing already early by knocking on doors. And my dad played all these activists. So before I even knew it, I was already like a speaker and a community organizer already. And I had a faith-based conscience. So I knew I wanted to be like Malcolm X and speak in front of currency exchanges and speak at beauty supply stores. I didn't know what I'd speak about yet, but I knew I wanted people to think I was smart, and I knew I wanted people to scream for me, and I wanted them to like, yes, teach me, blah, blah, blah. And so that was my direction. And so when I graduated college, I just started volunteering at Cook County Jail, thinking I was going to give these great speeches. The next thing you know, nobody wanted to hear me speak. I was like, who is this dude in this suit? Take off that suit. I started wearing my hoodies out of depression. Like, you guys ain't listening to me. I'm just gonna wear hoodies and Jordans. And then people started listening to me, and I was like, what the hell? And all they were talking about was, my block is this and my hood is that. And I'd be like, why do y'all always say my block and my hood? Why don't y'all ever say my city? And that's when I realized that they had never traveled outside their neighborhood or their block, and their whole worldview was shaped by Inglewood or Roseland or Chatham or wherever. And I wanted to start a field trip program where we can look out the window and see the Sears Tower, the Hancock, the Aon Center. I want to take you guys out of this jail and expose y'all to jobs down there. It was that simple.
When you first started doing that, like for those first groups of kids, what were their reactions once you took them downtown, or you exposed them to different things?
They were scared. Really, I'm scared to go inside of a glass building. If you've never been in, it sounds weird to me and people like me and you, but if you've never been in a big skyscraper before, you've never been in an elevator that don't have no buttons, it's scary, And so they never waved for a taxi before. They see Lake Michigan and they say, what ocean is that? You know what I mean? It's like it's a fish out of water experience. Just ask yourself, when was the last time you've ever been downtown Chicago without any money in your pocket, right? And what do you think it's like for a teenager to go downtown without money in their pocket? Best city in the world, we just talked about the architecture and infrastructure, but they can't do anything because they don't have any money. And so, and they also feel like they're not welcome with all the curfew laws, and we can get into that later. But anyways, that's how they felt, like disconnected. And I wanted them to know that just like these architects built these buildings from the ground up, you guys can be the architects of your own destiny as well.
And that's it. If you want to tell us about your why with Chicago and all the things that Chicago has given you, please feel free to share that with us. We're at Notes from Chicago on Instagram. We now have a brand new website. Oh my goodness. We're going to party like it's 1999. It's notesfromchicago.com. And yeah, I hope you find this interesting. This podcast is a labor of love. I love this city. I love the people in it. I love all of the cool things that folks are doing. And I love that I get to share it. I love that people talk to me. That's always fun. But I also love that I get to share it with other people. It's really beautiful. It's a really beautiful city. So dive in, and we'll see you soon. Thank you for listening to Notes from Chicago. This podcast is edited and produced by Tanisha Blakely. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to Notes from Chicago on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts.